And here we go here on Xel'Naga Caverns. So I need to switch it back over to StarCraft. And we're going to get started here. I should probably make sure I have everything up that I need. So while we are waiting for this to load, this match of the Root Gaming Success Pays Invitational is brought to you by Nerd Stomper. Nerd Stomper is about winning. Nerd Stomper teaches you how to play like a pro through learning from the world's best professional gamers. Their mission is to bring you the very best of interactive pro gaming content in the industry, from high-quality HD videos and live streams of your favorite gamers to active community of players and pros. Nerd Stomper is redefining interactive esports. Check out nerdstomper.com and help support a company who's supporting esports. So do you see that Bubbles is going to be the blue Protoss in the top right-hand corner? His opponent going to be the... Did I say Terran or Protoss?
You said right, yeah.
Okay. DDE is going to be the red Terran in the bottom left. Red versus blue, the classic showdown here on Xel'Naga Caverns. We're just going to have to see how this plays out. We can see really quick probe moving out here from Bubbles. It was after the pylon, so not going to be anything too crazy, but maybe see another gas steal or something crazy like that. Because it seemed to work pretty well for Minigun. Just going to get really early scouting here on DDE. Looks like he actually just wants to harass. But really curious to see what he's doing with this probe, as it did move out really quickly.
Yeah, normally the Protoss don't normally scout that early, of course. Generally it's off the gateway, so he is going to try to, I guess, harass here. Little Huck-style harassment. Don't let them build freely. Don't let them wall anything in, which is great to see. DDE pretty standard. He's not falling for any sort of harassment or anything like that, although that probe is definitely not giving up. Maybe he'll even try to sneak a pylon in there. That would be great. Bubbles doing the same thing back at home. Pretty standard. Again, this is the third match actually today of our round of 32. We have one more round of 32 coming up. A few people were asking. We will see Kiwi Kaki coming up. So stay tuned, guys. There's more games coming along today. We'll also be covering a few of the round of 16 games you guys can see on there. Special thanks to everybody for coming out, for all the sponsors, of course. We can't do these kind of events without sponsors and awesome teams like Root that just want to get sexy players, just awesome games out, and it's really fun to do these kind of open invitational tournaments. It's really great to see the caliber of players that show up to these. Bubbles is the next step up in that. He is an up-and-coming Protoss player. I've seen him, just a few of his VODs actually, but every game is just rock solid. He doesn't miss a beat. And I'm expecting really big things here. DDE is a solid Terran player, but I've seen some pretty sweet play from Bubbles, so I want to see if he can keep the minigun streak going and clean out this SCV and then begin his tech path.
Yeah, and of course having a name like Bubbles helps as well, because that's just completely awesome.
Badass.
You know, a lot of players going for things that are fearsome like minigun, and you've got over here in the other corner Bubbles, which always reminds you of like one of those chimpanzees or something that they always name at the zoo. Just a little bit of a different connotation to his name, but don't let that fool you. He's a very good Protoss, or he would not be here today. You can see him dropping 2 more gateways. He hasn't quite been able to clear this SCV out of his base, but he didn't want to wait too much longer before he got those down. So he did decide to just go ahead and drop those, even though his opponent could see it. On the other side of the map, we see a second factory finishing up here from DDE. So we're going to have something a little bit more mech-oriented here. Been seeing this a lot more in TVP recently. Could be one of these pre-igniter builds, as we do see a reactor on the way. Could see pre-igniter starting to be researched from this factory soon. Pre-igniter Hellions, Terrans are discovering, are just good in pretty much every matchup. And they've got some really interesting uses versus Protoss. Takes a little bit more care, because if you lose the Hellions without hitting the priority targets, then it can be really expensive. But if you can do a really good job with them early on, you can actually put a decent amount of hurt onto a Protoss player.
You can see Hellions also very effective against the Templar tech. I don't know if if Bubbles is going to do that route, he is on the 3-gate expand. Generally, that signifies, obviously, a more Colossus robo-heavy, but you've seen Hellions in the GSL used very strongly to just snipe off outlying Templar, be able to snipe entire packs of Zealots. So if he can micro these Hellions correctly and then start getting upgrades, he actually has no Siege, no Blue Flame coming out just yet. Very fearsome army can produce at tier 2 here. A little underestimated, I think, in most matchups. Most people favoring that awesome stim and then into medevacs, but the tech army, the mech army is very, very strong. So we'll see if what DD's response here is. He's just going to push onto his low ground, most likely get a command center started. He hasn't done that on the high ground, but he is bringing in SCV as well. It's going to just wait down there for now. Maybe a bunker will be set up pretty shortly, as he's definitely well behind in research. There's a supply depot, and then it will go into a command center next. Some stalkers pushing across the field for Bubbles. Still leaving a few sentries at home. He's just going to poke at the front here of DDE. Get a good look at the Hellion tank combination. See the amount of numbers there. Be able to discern what the producing structures are there. If you have 3 tanks out and 6 Hellions, it's more than one factory. That's just common math. So Bubbles is going to clear out that SCV, going to head into the hallway. Very good shoot and scoot there as he's delaying DDE's push here. DDE does want to push out. It looks like he has a few SCVs in the army there. Mobile medevacs for the tech army, for the mech army. So we'll see if this unupgraded mech army, what it's going to do against this gateway and then Immortal for Bubbles. I think it's going to shut down a lot of the mech here.
Yeah, and this is really interesting here by DDE, as he did not go for Pre-Igniter at all, didn't get Siege. He's just going for a pretty solid timing attack with Hellions, Marines, and tanks. If he can get some focus fire onto this Immortal, then he'll be doing pretty well, but great job by Bubbles, blocking in all the Hellions and the SCVs with some force fields, doing a ton of damage. The Stalkers coming in from behind, blowing up a couple of the tanks as well. This Immortal finally will go down, but it took a lot of units with them. Bubbles still being pushed back by this army. You can see a couple Hellions, Marines, and a single tank left, still doing a good amount of damage. But as his second Immortal pops out, he will be able to clear out this attack. Probably would have been much stronger with at least Pre-Igniter. It was an interesting timing by DDE, but I think it just needed to come a little bit sooner. Now he really does need to get Siege, because Pre-Igniter would be nice, but really need to be able to hold things off. Get some, probably a reactor down on this barracks as well, because he lost all of his Marines. Needs to get more Marines onto the field. He's just kind of in a really vulnerable position, especially since he's building this command center down here at his natural instead of up in his base. If Bubbles decides to go for an attack soon, it could really hurt him if he has a decent number of Immortals mixed in. You can see 2 Immortals on the field. But DDE is making the good decision of going for Siege over Pre-Igniter. Has a bunker down. Probably needs to get a second one up as well, just to make sure he's going to be safe against any counterattacks.
I do like this, though, pushing out with the Hellions, keeping them highly mobile. He's cleared out the watchtowers, so no Zealots, no probes can occupy those watchtowers anytime soon. So he's gaining map control. Even though he did lose the push, he still has map control, which is very rare to see against, obviously, a very aggressive Protoss 3-gate expand. Bubbles is answering completely correctly, getting those Immortals out. He is going to go on to Robotics Bay, and Colossus will definitely be a great response here as well. He'll be on 4-gate very shortly. He has a huge economic lead, an 11-worker lead, doubling the actual intake right now of minerals from against the Terran. I know he was just transferring workers, and that's going to catch up now, but definitely a giant lead as third factory is being produced, and a tech lab is being produced for that. I'd like to see an armory pretty shortly. I guess Thors must be in this mix somewhere, unless it's strictly just tank Hellion, which is very interesting. We'll see if DDE can make this work. He's getting turrets going to deny the scouting observer there. Marines not really being produced anymore. The barracks is just sitting in there on the low ground. It's more of a wall now than anything. 3 factory now is the menu item, so we'll see what DD can make happen here. But gaining map control, I think, is just huge. Losing the push and forcing the Protoss to defend. Bubbles doesn't necessarily know what's coming up. Bubbles getting a Stargate up there actually behind his natural, so very good response there. Pre-Igniter finally started. There is the armory finally for DD. So just we're going to see a heavy mech versus a Stargate buffered Robo Gateway army. So we'll see which section this works. We haven't seen this much in any high-level play that I can think of, actually. Generally, it's pretty typical, so this is very unique, and I'm really excited to see what comes of it. I'm actually rooting a little bit for the Terran here to see if they can make that mech play work.
I gotta say, this is looking a little bit better for Bubbles, though, because of the fact that he's not really even making Marines anymore. Marines are really important with these sort of an early game mech builds, because you're vulnerable in the early portion of the game where you can't get enough mech onto the field. The Marines are just really good supporting units. That's why you usually get a reactor onto these barracks, so you can have a good core of Marines protect you. Right now, he's not really going to have any anti-air, and once he gets a Thor out, it's not going to do very well if Bubbles gets a Void Ray, but Bubbles is actually going for a Phoenix, probably to scout around, because like you said, he doesn't have a whole lot of map control, he doesn't have too much map presence, he doesn't see much of the map, so he does have 2 Phoenixes. If he gets a 3rd one, he can fly those around, do some harassment, check out the entire map and see everything that's going on. But if he goes for Void Rays, that would be a really big problem for DDE with his high tank count and pretty much no anti-air. He has that armory, but no Thor on the way. That might be for upgrades, but he hasn't even started the upgrades yet, so really curious to see what DDE is going to be covering in that air section, because the big weakness would be Void Rays. Hellions trying to sneak up into the base. One of them does make it through, but AFKs. The others are going to go straight into the natural, going to take down a couple of probes, but not quite as many as it initially looked like he might get. Worker count is now 47 to 48. 1 SCV more for DDE. Bubbles is pushing through the middle of the map, but against this many siege tanks and only a couple of mortals, this is going to be really dangerous, because siege tanks with their significant range are really good at taking out Colossus and that many Stalkers. So the other problem is the fact that DDE does not have that many Hellions, because he just lost a significant portion. So this is going to be really nice timing for Bubbles, but just that's a huge number of tanks, and that's going to be a threat to pretty much any army composition at the moment. And he does have turrets up to prevent him from just lifting those off with the Phoenixes. I don't really see Bubbles actually being able to attack into this, and if he does, it's going to be a pretty significant mistake.
Yeah, 2 Thors coming out, 4th factory added here for DDE, so he's going to make this work no matter what. +1 mech weapons coming up, no surprise there. Starport has produced 2 Vikings, 2 more Vikings coming up, so he will be able to answer that as more Hellions are moving around into the main, or into the natural area. Just going to continue the harassment on Bubbles' line. More probes and more probes being forged, so this is the effectiveness of Hellions. They gain you that map control, they gain you that harassability. You don't need medevacs, you don't need bio drops, you don't need stim. Basically half the probes reduced there. Look at the numbers now of probes to workers. 61 workers right now for our Terran DDE, 38 for Bubbles there. So this is forcing Bubbles to be like, ow, ow, and then he's going to be aggressive here, make a mistake, and lose this army to that tank wall. So very, very smart play here from DDE. Very methodical, playing it nice and slowly. Command Center is going to push forwards now. More tanks pushing forwards. Vikings are going to be able to help zone, and here comes a little bit of baiting as 1 Stalker taken out, the proxy pylon taken out, and Bubbles can't break it. He can't get into it. 4 Phoenix are out. He needs to lift the tanks. I see Bubbles is taking his gold now, which is a great response. He's going to be able to get that income back that he so needs. But he's starting to fall just a slight bit behind.
He's moving in. He's going for it.
Going for broke.
Siege. Problem is that these Thors and the Vikings take out the Phoenixes extremely quickly. These Colossus are kind of trying to find a good angle of attack, but there really isn't any. It's a really great positioning by DDE. There's not that many tanks left, because some of them have just been caught unsieged. There is 1 more Immortal left on the field. Oh, 2 more. The other one in the back still terrorizing. DDE will barely hold this off, but it looks like Bubbles was in a much worse position than he managed to come out of that. DDE was sieged up in a really nice spot, but he just wound up not having enough reinforcing units there. Phoenixes didn't really do much, but they distracted fire from the more important units. And with Strike Cannon just about to finish DDE will be alright here if he can hold on a little bit longer. His Hellions are going to try and sneak back into the mineral line, but nice usage of Blink here by Bubbles. What looks like was a really scary for situation from Bubbles, he has managed to somehow come out alright. As now there's only 3 tanks left. The Immortal did go down. He just finished researching Strike Cannon, and there's no Thor. He's got these Vikings, but there's only 1 Colossus on the field. He is putting some work in onto this planetary fortress, but it's pretty much impossible to kill that with just a couple of units, as it's a planetary fortress. You know, they just don't die, ever. But, you know, this low siege tank here by DDE is going to be the crucial point in this game. The fact that he lost a lot of tanks in that engagement, that's really the key point when you're meching really hard, is your siege tank count.
Well, I want to point you to the units lost tab, though. Even though he did lose the units there, the more expensive units, the more loss goes to Bubbles here. Bubbles is behind in terms of units, and now the incomes are obviously about even, both players on their gold expansions, but more costly units being lost by Bubbles there, at least just in a minor amount, not a huge difference there. So it's interesting. He's forcing this Templar tech. Bubbles is going to get onto high temp there. Oh, as he blinks onto the high ground here, and he starts beginning to harass the production here of DDE. Tanks being misrallied there, trying to get the back door. Those Stalkers doing significant damage. That is one abuse of the mech army that you see, or you should see, use. The high immobility. These tanks have to all unsiege, walk their slow bums up the ramp, while 2 factories are lost, and then re-siege again while the other units blink out, and no losses are taken really on the Protoss side there. So snipe the Colossus, but just amazing use of Blink and Colossus harass there. 2 factories with reactors go down, and DDE is forced to rebuild those on the low ground, slowing down his unit production. Hopefully into a point where Bubbles can actually catch up now, because he was a little bit behind in terms of units lost, but it's still actually neck and neck now. Second armory up for DDE, not upgrading any ground army yet. Gas cap DDE right now. He doesn't have any harvesters in his main on gas. I'm wondering why that is, actually.
Probably just hit that control button onto his workers when he was transferring away. Yeah. Didn't quite pay attention to which workers he was grabbing. And things are actually looking pretty decent now for Bubbles. You can see he just worked in a couple of Archons. He's got a good number of charge lots. He's got Blink. He's got all of the units that he needs to be really mobile here on the map against the mech army. Like you're saying, that's what you need to do versus the mech. Just just be more mobile than them. He does still have some Phoenixes on the field to try and protect these Colossus. He does try and blink forward, take out those Vikings, but takes a couple tank shots in return. But he's completely shut down the mining here at the gold. He's got another 4th on the way. At the top left base. So Bubbles is moving along in this game pretty nicely. These Archons are going to make really good meat shields along with those charge lots. As Archons don't take bonus damage from anything. Without EMP, they are pretty hard to take out. So you see Bubbles just sort of positioning, but it's still impossible to kill a planetary fortress. That hasn't quite changed in the last 10 minutes. So he is waiting on actually getting the amulet first at his Templar Archives. Interesting decision here. So it means he's not really going to warp any Templar for a while. Just stick with the Colossus and the supporting units until he finishes both those upgrades and be able to warp in Storms.
Food count right now in the favor of the Terran player, actually 166 to 138. So the Protoss army, although it is nice and shiny, is a little bit behind in terms of just POW. Units, obviously the worker count, actually, I should say, for DD making up the difference for that, as more units of the gold being toasted by these Hellions. They take out about 7 or 8 probes before being repelled there. 2 of them are going to not make it away thanks to those awesomely fast Phoenix. DDE continuing to surge forward. He is going to build his next expansion, this time on the high ground, be able to defend it a little bit easier. It's going to lift off there, a turret being placed for good measure, and continuing to just power up, finally getting that +1 armor for the mech army. DDE has reconstructed the factories, and it looks like Bubbles is going to swing back around here, going to deny that 4th base again there from DDE. DDE has a pretty good tank positioning, though, this time on the high ground, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult, although they do cut in at the right angle, and that orbital command is definitely lost.
I do like that Bubbles is finally going for Void Rays, as you know, DDE really still doesn't have that much anti-air, just these Vikings.
Yeah.
And the Void Rays, if they do manage to somehow win that battle against the Vikings, they'll start to really get to count on everything that DDE has. Here comes a massive number of Hellions going in on both bases of Bubbles. It's completely ridiculous how well DDE has managed to stay in this game just based on his Hellion count. Workers down to 25 for Bubbles, 21. Down to 17 workers here for Bubbles. He's lost so many units, these Hellions, consistently throughout this game. If he just you know, invested a little bit more in defending his worker lines, he probably would have won this game by now. But his economy is hurting so badly because DDE is doing such a great job of keeping these Hellions moving around the map constantly. And, you know, DDE setting up another expansion to the bottom right again. They're going to be even on bases. There's a good amount of Vikings out. He's not going to be able to produce enough Void Rays. You can see that he is switching back over to Phoenixes because he just can't make enough Void Rays after losing that many probes. If DDE can drag this game out, things are working in his favor for a really long game. But here comes Bubbles pushing in. He doesn't want this to go too much longer. Attacking in, lifting off tanks. Colossus killing everything. Stalkers trying to take out these Vikings. But these siege tanks on the high ground are blowing up all of the warp gate units from a really nice position. There's only a couple supporting units left here. All the Vikings are still alive, so he can take out all these Colossus. And Bubbles says, pause, please. Oh my god. What?
He almost dropped my mouse. That's why they were attacking him. Couldn't pull the units back. Oh, that sucks. But he did manage to cut a hole into DDE, again denying that fourth expansion, very important, denying a ton of workers from DDE on the gold base. You can see, look at DDE's probe numbers from SCV numbers, 23 to 23. So dead even.
Not that long ago. So he killed a ridiculous number of workers, but now DDE's coming with Hellions again. He's completely merciless here. I mean, even though he apparently stopped having a functional mouse halfway through that battle, he still did a pretty good job. If you look at the tank count, it's down to 2 with 7 Vikings and 5 Hellions. So like I was saying, DDE was setting up for a really long game there, and Bubbles managed to attack in at a really crucial point and say no. So he's still alright here. You can see he cleared out those Hellions finally. It's going to be 23 workers to 16. We're going to have a really, really low economy here in the late game. This extra planetary fortress here in the middle of the map by DDE, he's going to be kicking himself. Why, oh, why is this a planetary fortress? I could lift this off and send it over somewhere.
I know, totally. That was 400 minerals that you're not going to be able to easily get back here. And more harassment on Bubbles natural, or that gold expansion there. Again, just reducing the income for both players back to a pre-game state. So both players basically at the 2-minute mark in terms of their normal income. Bubbles in a great position though to deny that third, killing more SCVs with just the awesome amount of Colossus he has up there. Really weak air-wise. I don't know why these Vikings aren't harassing. They have superior range here actually on these Colossus. Even on the remaining Stalkers, Blink effective, but you can still get a couple of pot shots off them. More Hellions are going in there. More probes lost for Bubbles at his third expansion, or his fourth base, but Bubbles still in a bit of a lead here. No more mining has been... Terran actually really almost mined out here.
Look at the production tab.
TDE can't even afford a new... He's going to have to move one of his command centers. He already has. He only has his natural command center left that is mobile. He can't afford to make a new command center, so... Going to be interesting to see is I think the harassment for DDE, not able to capitalize on it, not able to just cut off this Protoss army. He should have got onto the north side of the gold planetary fortress there, denied that path into the fourth base at the back, forced the Protoss to fight at the planetary on the high ground, or else if he turned that corner, just take significant damage. Just a little bit out of place now, and he's going to try to push into this, but the ball of Bubbles right now is just way too strong versus the very depleted ball of DDE, and DDE's already losing a few units for no reason. Factories coming down, take some damage. 2 siege tanks in position, going to start shelling, but very, very behind, and +3, +1 for Bubbles, so those Colossus are doing as much damage as they can, and are just being significant pain in the bums for DDE, and DDE's going to move that his last command center basically with his SCVs try to get mining here, but these Colossus are gonna, I get the feeling, gonna snipe these remaining SCVs, and that's probably gonna be it.
The problem is DD doesn't have any mineral patches. He has to attack him here in a position where he can't really. There's just so many units here for Bubbles. These Colossus, the Storms, and the Archon still being alive. So he's a big difference. As you can see, he's going to be able to completely overwhelm this army. DDE is just forced into conceding. The main difference was this base here being mined out, and the fact that Bubbles had this one secured up here, even with no workers on it. That was the big difference. And the Hellions came back to bug DD a little bit, and the fact that Bubbles wasn't mined out anywhere because he'd been killing the Pirogues all game.